So good morning, everyone. We are going to speed run you, I think, through a philosophical fireside here about how to upgrade your personal values with Bitcoin. This is something that Vijay and I have been talking about for quite some time. Vijay also wrote an amazing book called Principles of Bitcoin. So we have, three subjects that we kind of want to talk through and share our thoughts with you about. And the first one is low time preference. This is, of course, something that I think many people that have studied Bitcoin have heard. And kind of how we think about that is that, everyone has this natural anxiety about the future, right? We don't really know when we're going to die, literally. So we all have a certain anxiety towards the future that we kind of want to lower or mitigate. And the problem that we have with fiat money is that if we spend our time and energy for a reward that is constantly losing its value, our anxiety towards the future is actually amplified. So what could we do when we actually save our time and energy in Bitcoin? What does that mean, and how does that change our outlook towards the future, and how can we kind of be excited towards the future instead of being nihilistic?
Yeah, thanks, Bram. I always enjoy our conversations, so it's great to be sharing a stage with you today. I think, you mentioned time preference. I think, and when it comes to one of the main points is not necessarily a Bitcoin specific thing, but rather what happens when you are on a hard money standard as opposed to a discretionary, centrally planned fiat standard, and what are the repercussions of being on one or the other. And so, I mean, centrally planned fiat is basically at the core of consumerism. And so when you are on that kind of a standard, you see the fruits of that all around you. For example, in architecture, you have planned obsolescence, where buildings are built not to withstand centuries, but rather just a few years until they are redundant. You see its implications in the quality of our food, and just the destruction of the environment from overconsumption. So I think the first thing is with respect to time preference. So when you are on a hard money standard, then you're incentivized to save for the future, not overconsume, not lever up in order to consume today, because the value of your money is going to fall in the future, but rather you're incentivized to delay gratification, because if you delayed the gratification, it's going to be better gratification in the future because your money is worth more and you can buy more with that money. So I think, to your point, that's probably the first and probably the most important value that comes out of being on a hard money standard.
Yeah. What I also really enjoy is that it invites you to build, right? Like what you're saying is that when your reward is denominated in fiat money, you're not really incentivized to save that, right? Like in order to create something in the future, something big or something adventurous, like building something or maybe starting a family or moving somewhere or buying a home, right? Whatever your long-term goal is. If you already know that the capital that you're saving for that is going to lose value over time, you're also not really incentivized or motivated to do that. And also, I think you cannot really create time and space to actually try something and fail, right? But if you are on a hard money standard and you know that your capital is growing in purchasing power over time, you can actually take the time and space and the risk to try something big, and then it's actually okay if you fail. And so in a weird way, I also feel that a hard money standard would actually kind of introduce what in my mind would be capitalism, as in like people can actually try different things and are also actually allowed at failing at their attempts, and that would be all okay, and it would actually help them to find their purpose in life, or like what they are actually good at with regard to delivering value.
Yeah, I agree with that. Maybe the next thing we talked about was authenticity and how Bitcoin brings that out in people. And when I wrote Principles of Bitcoin, um, one of the things I spent a lot of time thinking about, because I'm from the traditional financial world. I spent 11 years at Goldman Sachs. That's very much my space. I'm a lawyer, Wall Street lawyer, and all of that. And then I came into Bitcoin. So one thing I spent a lot of time thinking about was, why is Bitcoin so hard for people to understand? And I think one of the main reasons for that is just people are quite arrogant. Well, people are quite lazy also to put in the work and try to understand something as complex as Bitcoin. But they're also very arrogant. They come from a place. If you've had a very successful career on Wall Street and you've made tens of millions of dollars, and someone comes along and tells you you've missed the greatest investment opportunity of a lifetime, you're going to react defensively to that, and you're not going to be open to that. So, what Bitcoin kind of encourages is open-mindedness, curiosity. It's for people who are intellectually humble and open-minded. And it is, in many ways, this historic transfer of wealth from the people who are resistant to change or just just very intellectually arrogant, to the curious and the open-minded and those who are open to new technologies and new ideas, and also open to the idea that maybe you missed something and maybe you're wrong about something. And so from that, I think, comes authenticity, which is something you see, I think, in this space quite a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it so interesting that change is never ending, right? Like there is always change, and people are very apprehensive towards change. They kind of like dismiss it, but sometimes I hear that, or when I'm in my Twitter X discussions with some critics, they say like Bitcoin is a cult, right? These people all have this same idea towards the future. They're crazy because they see this reality not as I see it. And my standard reply now is, if Bitcoin was a cult, it would be the only cult in the world that would invite its members to not trust other people and think for themselves, right? Like use your own mind. That's the whole point. And I think this is also why adoption is sometimes slower than what we want, because, well, when you have figured it out and are like, okay, I want to store my time and energy in money that cannot be debased, why aren't other people choosing for that? But I agree with you. Change is just hard, and you have to, kind of like I always say, like take a little red pill before you take the orange pill. Like you have to come to terms with the fact that, you don't really understand how money works, that you never really thought about that, even when you are a certain type of professional or you have a successful career. At one point, I just realized, I'm a subject in this system rather than an actor, although I was doing all these different types of things. And that really stuck with me. Like I felt like an idiot for not realizing that. And I think you need certain triggers along the way that kind of like, open your mind to that. And eventually, one of the principles of Bitcoin, I think, is also that, don't trust, verify. Like you can listen to other people, you can listen to podcasts, right? But the message is always study Bitcoin and not buy Bitcoin, right? Like you have to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming back to your first point, I think it's also about when you talk about time preference and so on. It's you learn what is of real value in life, because again, if you're not on that hamster wheel trying to spend in order to keep the wheel spinning at all costs, and you spend money, bridges to nowhere kind of thing, you introduce in your life what people call the Bitcoin hurdle rate, right? So you don't invest in things that produce a lower return than Bitcoin is returning, and that just broadly, creates better value in society and conscious consumption along the way. And you and I talked about Bitcoin's impact on violence as well, and wars. by virtue of the dematerialization of wealth. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, that's...
Yeah, I think that is an idea that is still quite out there, right? I like the old, or like the comparisons that Saif Dinamus does in his books about like two standing armies that have a limited amount of men, a limited amount of supplies, a limited amount of funds, right? And at one point when one side seems to be winning, the other side would, come to them and propose like a truce or a certain agreement, because they just had a limited amount of resources that they could literally physically spend on whatever their objective was, right? And fiat money has totally distorted that. Like there is no limit, and there's basically moral hazard everywhere, right? There is no one that is basically forcing themselves to have a certain type of financial austerity, to also have a limit to the attempts that they're doing in order to reach whatever the goals are, right? And so that's what I really like on a personal level, is that it makes you way more aware of what you're doing in order to create value, if that's working or not. And then when you get value in return, right, when you get rewarded for whatever you put out there, you are more responsible about how you save and how you spend it. And I think, well, value is a really interesting word in that sense. Like spending money is also an expression of value, right? Like you show or say what you deem valuable. And I think if people have that Bitcoin appreciation as a hurdle rate for themselves, right, they're just going to be way more conscious about what they're spending the wealth on that they've acquired. And I know you're big on the consumerism thing, like that. I think would combat that as well. And I think it would also bring back like these old, like things that people were proud of in the past. I once told you that a few months ago I was in Belgium at a building that was built in like 1572 or something. And I was standing in front of it and I was just thinking like, wow, like what has been built in my lifetime that will stand for 500 years? And how would the people feel that actually worked on it, that what they put their time and energy into is actually still something that exists today and that other people can see, right? Like I think these things are something that we've kind of forgotten in 2025.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, on the, if you think about through history, virtually all human conflict, all wars have been fought to acquire or defend physical property. Right? The course of history and civilization has been shaped by wars that have been just either defending land, gold, other physical wealth, or trying to acquire it. So what are the implications when wealth is completely dematerialized? And all you rely on is cryptography. You don't need warships and fighter jets and nuclear weapons. You just rely on SHA-256 or whatever quantum-resistant cryptography to secure millions, billions, trillions of dollars, someday. So the return on your, I think Trace Mayer said this, I remember hearing him talk about it in 2015 or so, the return on your investment in violence is rapidly diminishing because you're not going to get very much. There's nothing to acquire. There's nothing physical to acquire anymore if it is all just dematerialized, and you can walk across borders with nothing but the shirt on your back and carry millions of dollars with you, right? And that's incredibly revolutionary. And so then what does that do to society if you're not investing in violence and in armies and so on? The only way to acquire wealth is actually by offering you value
Yeah.
and getting Bitcoin in return.
Yeah.
And you know, that's pretty revolutionary. And in terms of upgrading your values, I mean, that's the, you know, kind of right at the heart of it.
Yeah. I see we have a minute left, but we have one more thing to share. Is we often talked about like how Bitcoin is a mirror, and I think we both have two different ways of talking about that. I'll share my point of view. I see Bitcoin really as like a parallel system for money. And all the characteristics of Bitcoin are the total opposite of the characteristics of fiat money. And Bitcoin forces you to be transparent. It forces you to deliver value. It forces you to think on a long time frame, and also to think for yourself and be a critical thinker. And I think if we as Bitcoiners keep on doing this and keep on showing it, people will eventually come to Bitcoin because they know that we've upgraded our lives through Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a mirror in that it shows you, you know, sort of, yeah, how open-minded you are and how honest, how intellectually honest you are. And if sort of, you know, everyone buys Bitcoin at the price they deserve, you know, as they say. So it's, I think it does kind of show you who you are, and it makes you, it keeps you honest. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.